Everyone has a bright light inside of them that deserves to be seen by the world. That's why it's time to shine the light on the extraordinary who are accomplishing phenomenal things. This is the Shine Out Loud Show with Lillian Ahaghotu.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever in the world you are, and welcome to another episode of the Shine Out Loud Show with me, Lillian Ahaghotu. Now tonight, I have a woman who went from being a teacher and an administrator to helping women of color. She didn't stutter, helping Black women create six-figure businesses, monetizing what's in their heads. She is a course creator, a content designer, but most importantly, she helps women show up and be visible by creating their courses and putting it out in the world. I'm talking about Jen Franks Ahaghotu. Jen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm just so energized by that introduction. I'm all about that. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, Lillian.
Oh, I am so glad to have you. It's an honor and a privilege, first and foremost, to speak to a woman who is a Black woman who has made a conscious decision to work with other women of color, especially Black women. So the honor and pleasure is mine.
Thanks.
So there are people who will know you in terms of your background as being a teacher and an administrator in the New York area. How did you go from that leap from being that teacher, that administrator, to helping Black women to become thought leaders by creating courses and growing a six-figure business?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. How did I end up here? That's a really good question. I always, even as a teacher, I really liked my independence, right? So I started out as a second grade teacher. One of the things that I really loved, in addition to just serving families and students and, the school in general, was when we got to be creative. Right. And in second grade, so in the US in second grade, those are like 7 and 8 year olds. We'd do these amazing projects. So I worked in New York, in Brooklyn in particular. And, we had projects where we'd learn all about the ocean, and we'd take the kids to the aquarium, and we'd go to the ocean and, pick out shells on the beach, and kind of really we would, what else would we do? We also brought them into like a fish store, and we would see, well, how does fish go from the ocean to your plate? And just all of these amazing things, in addition to, learning your mathematics, and, multiplication tables and stuff like that. We had these really magical experiences with the kids, and where we got to be really creative. And I always loved, that was always my favorite part about teaching. And so I think, as I moved forward in my career, I was, like you said, I was an administrator. I worked on a program that worked with 250 schools in New York City. That was a $6 million budget, I think it was, and it's this massive program. And so I think in the classroom, I really enjoyed that creativity. And then I went on in terms of administration, doing very creative work as well. Right. And then that led to me being out on my own and just taking that creativity to the next level. So I think, I've always been attracted to that. And even now, I'm thinking about, well, what's next for the business and where am I going to go from here? So yeah, I've always enjoyed doing things that were really creative and different, and just pursuing my interests.
Well, I love that, because there seemed to be that flow of, you need that creative element, not just when you're teaching the children, but when you're taking into the administrative office. But that seems to be that theme, that central theme of how do you create, but also how do you create and create freedom. So let's look at this, because creating freedom is important, but in education is that fundamental element. So you talked about that program that you launched. What was that program, and how did it benefit the children of New York?
Oh yeah, that program was my baby. Oh my goodness, I loved it. So the name of it was the Learning Partners Program.
Okay.
So basically you can imagine, so New York City is the biggest school district in the country. I think it's 1.1 million students.
Wow.
And it's, yeah, massive, massive. And so and it's very political, right? Because the mayor comes in, the mayor chooses the chancellor of schools, and then the chancellor of schools is usually there for those 4 years or 8 years that the mayor's there, and then things turn over. So I ended up in an administrative position in New York right before there was a new mayor and new chancellor. So new mayor comes in, new chancellor comes in, and the chancellor says, okay, we've had way too much competition in New York City, just everybody's sort of on their own, competing against each other. And we want to shift the narrative from competition to collaboration.
Okay.
And we're like, great, that sounds wonderful, amazing. How are we going to do that? And I happened to be on the team of people who she said, okay, you're going to do that. Your team's going to do that. And what I want you to do is I want you to have principals visiting each other's schools, getting to learn from each other, and then bringing that back to their own schools. And we're like, that sounds great. Okay. And then we just had to figure it out and had to figure out how to put that together, how to start it, getting the word out. And that was really, so we had a very clear there was a very clear vision for what the program was meant to represent. But in terms of figuring out all the pieces, we had to do all of that ourselves. And so, we started out with 18 schools, and really I was there actually from the very beginning to the very end of the program. And each year we got a little bit more specific. We iterated on it, added more schools in, and by the end of the time, we had schools working together and learning from each other and bringing that back to their own schools, right. And then figuring out, well, okay, how do we make change in our own schools? And then finally, sort of the layer that we added right at the in the last few years of the program was around racial equity. And right. Then we said, okay, great. We're glad that you're making change in your schools. It's imperative, especially in New York City, that you also look at what is going on for your students of color, for your Black and Brown students in particular. Okay. So the program really started out as principals talking to each other, and then really grew into this massive program where, we had schools working with us for 3 years and really making amazing strides, and really making change in their on their school sites, in addition to really looking at racial equity, sometimes for the first time. So it was really amazing.
It sounds like it would have had a lasting effect, not just for the students, but also for the teachers, especially that piece around the racial equity. I can just imagine the impact and change that would have had. So to have that as your legacy, that must be something that you are truly proud of.
Yes, I really am. I really am. Gosh, I am so proud of that work. I'm so proud of that work and what we did, and really taking, like I said, taking that vision and seeing it through, and seeing where it could go over time. We really figured, like in the beginning, it was very much principals talking with each other, and that was really it. Like there was no expectation, there was no way, there was no like mechanism for people to bring that back to the school. So sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. You didn't really know what was going to happen. But then, we really looked at how do you make change in a school, and broke that down. For 250 schools every year, we had to have a program that helped them to actually make that change. And that was my job. I was the program director and evaluator. And so each year, we made it a little bit better and a little more potent, and it made a huge impact on kids, and like you said, on teachers and administrators too.
Awesome. So keeping in with the schools, when we think about education, I'm going to come back to that particular question. Actually, I'm going to ask another question first.
Sure.
If you can looking at New York right now, looking at the state of education and all the other things that are coming up, if you could freely change something today, what would it be?
Oh yeah, I know I know exactly what that is. So one of the challenges with being at the seat of politics in education in New York and really in any location, I think that it's really hard when there are changes in administration. And then when the new administration comes in, everything gets shuffled, right? So good programs get shuffled, not so great programs get shuffled. So it's less that people it's less that people leave, but it's like people are moved around into different places.
Right.
And so I feel like one of the real challenges in education is changing things too quickly, which almost sounds strange because education is one of those industries that, when you think about that versus entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship moves very quickly and things change very quickly. And it feels like sometimes with education that things are changing very slowly. But I think one of the reasons for that is that different programs are not necessarily given the time that they need in order to grow. Like it's almost like with a business, if you try to move too quickly with your business or scale too quickly, you can everything can just,
crash and burn.
Self-destruct. Yeah, exactly. And I think what happens with education, sometimes you try something for a year or two. Oh, that didn't work. Try something else for a year or two. Oh, that didn't work. But really, it's not that it didn't work. It's that it takes time for your teachers to understand what it is, and then to be able to teach the kids, and then to teach them well. And then, so I think one of the challenges with education is the rate at which things change and are discarded, when really it would be more helpful to look critically at what's working and what's not and make adjustments based on that rather than just throw something out and start something new.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I understand that. And I'm looking at that because that's kind of leading me into my next question, which you talk about things changing quickly and not being given enough time to germinate and really take root in schools. But my question is about the educational system itself. And you can't say for every system, but there isn't been change because the educational system hasn't changed in over 60, 70 years now. It's the same style. It's a one size fits all. And so this idea that intelligence has to feel, look, and be a certain way. And do you think that is helping or harming?
Yeah. So that is a great question. I think, so I'll say this, education was a very important vehicle for my family to get out of poverty, essentially. Right. Okay. So I have the utmost respect for education. And I think that it's, the education system, there are a lot of opportunities there for people. I also think that there are a lot of archaic pieces to it. And when I'm thinking about, so I have two daughters in school. I have a middle schooler and an elementary schooler who actually just finished their last day of school today. They're very excited. So, when I think about their lives and the way that they're living and, the different opportunities that are out there for them now, I feel like education has not caught up yet. It has not caught up. And there's still very much like rote learning and memorization and, history that's based on the patriarchy. And so there's definitely a lot that I think is really like, it's old, really, and should be updated. There's a lot about education that should be updated. So yeah, I think that I have a lot of respect for education and for educators. But I also think that, I'm trying to think how I really want to put this. I also think that there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of really serving this next generation, and frankly, trying to keep up with them, to be honest.
Thank you for that very candid answer, because I definitely feel like there's room. And I love the fact that you pointed out your respect for education and educators, because I come from a background where education is first and foremost. So I will never say to anybody it's not the way, but I think the need to change how we educate is definitely something that needs to be investigated. And you pointed out something about the patriarchy still being very much that forefront in how things are, the lens that we see things. And so do you think that the patriarchy is still instilling in children, especially children of color, the attitude that a less than attitude, that they are less than? And what can we do as families, as aunts, as parents, as just older in the world to actually start protecting them and reminding them that this is not true?
Yeah. Ooh, we're going deep. I love it. We all know, right, that representation is very important.
Yes.
And we are sorely underrepresented in sort of your typical American education system. So listen, I've worked in public schools, private schools, charter schools. I've worked in, districts and all different socioeconomic backgrounds. And I've seen a lot of schools and a lot of different models. But I will say, and I think that some schools are doing a good job of this, but I think that there's a lot of work to be done in terms of what it is that we teach children, and more importantly, whose stories get told.
Definitely.
So yeah. Our stories, stories of Black and brown people, immigrants, anybody who's not your sort of cis white male. There aren't enough of our stories being told, and it's improving. It's actually improving quite a bit. I think, just not necessarily in schools, but in sort of the media and in content that's out there, think about like Netflix and things like that. I think that I do see more representation than I did maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, certainly when I was growing up, when we were growing up. But there's a lot, it's not even close. So I find that, so we live in a predominantly white area. We live in a suburb of Philadelphia. And where there are more different types of people, different races of people coming in, but it's a white world over here, and it's a white school. And so we are constantly talking to our kids about, I'll give you an example. My daughter was in the 4th grade, and she was doing a project on George Washington. Right. So our first president, right? So we're talking about how great he was and his leadership and a general and blah, 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 which is all well and good, but he also had slaves. And so she was one of the only kids, I think maybe the only child in her class who said, yes, George Washington was a really important figure in our history, but also he's not perfect. And this was a major issue, right? That his family owned slaves. So, and I remember her teacher talking to us and saying, oh, this is such an interesting, take on this. And I was really intrigued by her perspective, which is, I appreciated that, but also understand that for that to be, significant speaks to the problem. Yeah. Speaks to the problem. So that's just one example, but we're constantly, talking to them about what they're learning in school and adding our own perspective on it.
I think that's the key point, is adding that perspective and adding a different lens. And I think that is absolutely required. So let's move away from the educational system and really start delving a bit more into who you are in terms of your business and creation. And so one of the things that you do is you talk about being a radical truth teller and helping people tell their own truth. So how does telling our truth lead the way to more success? How does that break ground for more success?
Yeah. So, I think that it's important for us to think about what we really think of as success, right? So I think that when you have, so I really like to work with women who have sort of reached a certain level of success in their business or, with their personal brands. And usually what happens is there's something that either we really want to do or something that we really want to say that we're not quite letting ourselves say it. We're not quite letting ourselves go to be able to say that thing. And oftentimes, when I talk to people about that, they have sort of a sense of something that they have been thinking about for a while, but had thought, no, I can't really do that, or I can't really say that, or, I'm not allowed to have that, or, whatever the situation is. And when you are able to really step into that and say that thing, sort of acknowledge it and embrace it, and it like frees you to be who you were always wanting to be and always meant to be. And then when you are in that position, you can do whatever you want. You can really do whatever you want, and it's deeply empowering. And then you can leverage that then for your business and your personal brand. Because one of the big things, I think a lot of us know this, is that especially, when you're selling something, whatever your service is, or your products are, like, people are very interested in you, and they're interested in, not just like sort of your resume, right? But how you show up. And when you show up in your full self, people are attracted to that, because it's like, it gives them permission to do the same thing. They're intrigued by that. And so that really magnetizes people to you, to your business, and, can help move things forward.
I love that. I love the fact that it's about getting women to that space to say, this is who you are, and the world needs to know you. And so it's like you take them on that journey. So I'm going to ask you a piece of your truth. So why did you make that conscious decision to only choose to serve Black women as clients?
Yeah. That was something that took a while for me to get to in the beginning, because, with these businesses, it's like, well, first of all, I used to think that the business was the thing that, okay, I'm building a business and I'm going to get clients and I'm going to, provide services, and that's what I'm building. Right. And then you get on the journey. And what I realized was that the business is not really the thing. Self-actualization is the thing. And the business is the vehicle to do that. So, So yeah, so this being on this journey for the past few years has been like the most beautiful growth opportunity and personal development, and personal, freedom experience that I've ever, like there's nothing that's even come close to that. And so, over time, I've sort of started to learn more and more about that, and learn more and more about myself. And so at first, I was helping women to create courses and build a business with that. And then I realized, okay, there's so much more to it than that. Like, it's not just building a course. It's really like, living your truth. It's like really being brave enough to live your destiny. And I forget the question now exactly that you asked. To be
So the
honest.
question is, why did you make that conscious decision to say, I will serve Black women?
Oh, yes. So in the beginning, I thought, whoever wants to work with me, right? I'll work with whoever. And then little by little, I realized, no, I really like to work with women. Okay. So I'm just, I'm going to work with women. And then sometime after that, I realized, no, I think a major part of my own journey and my own truth was being able to stand up and talk about who I am as a Black woman, very specifically as a Black woman. Both of those two pieces, listen, I'm more than that, and you're more than that, and we're way more than just those two pieces of ourselves. But when I really embraced that and started speaking to that, I was very much empowered. And so I realized that, you know what, I really want to do that same work with other Black women. And I think there are lots and lots of opportunities for, white males, for example, or for women, but it's different. Like when you put like being a woman and then being a Black person, when you kind of juxtapose those two, it's a very special like place to be in. And I find myself attracted to that. And so I am leaning into it, and I want to apologize for it.
You know what? And I don't think you should. Absolutely not. So, and I love that. I love that you're like, let me lean into something I know, who I know, because it's not saying that, and we're not saying that every Black woman has the same experience, but there is something about saying, I understand what it is to face the world with this skin, with this face, what that means for me being my gender, me being my race. And so I think it's a very bold statement to make when you are able to make that truth your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting that, so the kind of response that I get about that, first of all, when I talk to other Black women, it's almost like you can see physically that they're just like, they're sort of relieved. They're like, finally somebody I can talk to about that. Like, it's like, I love how you said that we listen, we are all different and beautiful and unique in our own ways. And which is one of the reasons why I love to get to know other Black women, because I learn so much from us. But then there's also just like, that like, this is a place for me. This is a place for me. And I feel like that's so important. But then also when I talk to other women about it, so white women, for example, have been also very excited about my focus on Black women, which I found sort of interesting. They're like, they kind of acknowledging that that's not really their experience, but also knowing, having a sense that that is an important thing for us, an important place for us to have. So I found support from other people as well, which is kind of interesting.
And that's what allyship is about, and having the right allies are necessary. Absolutely. So, there's a lot to kind of unpack with that, but I have some other questions. And you've been talking about being the course creator, and let's touch on this. you're talking about taking women and helping them take the content in their head, content they use with their clients on a one-to-one basis, and creating courses. So my question is, what are, there is a proliferation of courses. There are proliferation of so many, should we call them shelf help books? What are the key ingredients that you provide to your clients that takes your course from kind of finished to being that course that engages, that holds, that activates that person want to make sure that they complete it?
Yeah, I love that. I think the most important piece is education. Like, my background is an educator. So I've been designing courses, right? Quote unquote courses for years now, for kids, for adults. I think it really starts with really designing that beautiful learning experience for another person, and not just another person, usually somebody who's very new and very green to whatever it is that you are sharing with them. So when you think about that, it's really important to think be very empathetic with your audience and think, okay, where, if I was completely new to a topic, what is the first thing? So like, if I was completely new, like I wanted to learn how to garden, for example, and I've never, touched that before in my life. What are some of the things, not just things that I need to know, but ways that I need to relate to that, so that I can feel confident in moving forward. So it's sort of a mix of, I find that a good course is a mix of information, yes, but also bite-sized pieces where people feel like, oh, okay, I understand what it is that I'm supposed to do next. And then they go ahead and do it. And then the next piece and the next piece, with a lot of encouragement, a lot of opportunity to try things out and feel successful with every step that they take, so that they're continuing to move forward. So yeah, I think that it's really helpful, because when I work with people on their course, usually they're experts in what they know, and I'm not the expert. So I'm already asking them questions from the novice's perspective. And I think that really helps them to create something that's just, this magical path for their client.
Awesome. And I'm a course junkie, so I'm always constantly learning. So I do appreciate a well put together course. I do. So, when we go back into your bio, you talk about trying to outrun racism. That's a new one. Racism, sexism, and the patriarchy. And, and you were doing that by always trying to be a little more perfect. Do you think that this is one of the main things that keep women stuck, especially women of color? And if you do think this is so, what is the one thing women can do daily to undo this damage?
Yes. I think it's hard out there. It's really a challenge, and especially, in a system that was not made for us as women of color, as Black women. It's a system that was not made for us, a system that was actually made to not have us be successful. And so, so what I found myself doing was, like, I guess I say I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'm still working on it. But I would always be trying to be a little bit better. And then, when I would be like microaggressed by people that I was working with, I thought, oh, I must be doing something wrong, or without really understanding for a long time that sort of the dynamics of race in how we were interacting. I just thought, oh, I must be, I'm getting criticism because I'm not good enough and I need to do better. When really I was getting criticism for a lot of different reasons, but some of which were, I don't really like being supervised by a person of color, right? Or they're just like racial tensions and dynamics
So
there.
Invariably, you were getting criticized for something that had nothing to do with you or your abilities.
Nope, nothing to do with me and my abilities. So your question is, what should women do? So I think that one of the most important things to do is to question what people are telling you. So if you just, I think that that's the most important thing. Or like the first piece, I think, is just to become conscious of, the dynamics that are at play. Like that's really the first step. So when somebody, maybe, let's say somebody criticizes something that you like, something that you said in a presentation or something like that, to also, in addition to saying, okay, what can I do better? And, a lot of times we'll do that very naturally, but also just to understand that the criticism is not necessarily like completely separated from your race. That sometimes people are saying things because they feel like they can say those things to you, or they feel like they're better than you, and they're not even necessarily conscious of it either. Like there's a lot of layers of like unconscious bias and things like that. But I think also saying, okay, like I can learn something from this, but also understand that I'm in a system where where people feel freer to question or criticize me, and that's not my fault.
And that part, it's not my fault, and then trying to be perfect should not be the goal.
Don't try to be perfect. Like let that go. I mean, I say let it go. It's difficult to let that go. So I appreciate that. But I do think if you can be more conscious of it, and in addition to, striving to be better, also understand that you're working within a system that's not serving you, and that's hard, and that's, and it's okay to not be perfect.
And I think that's a powerful message. So let's kind of roll on, because there's a question that I want to ask that kind of backs on this, because you probably, in your time in your corporate career, and even in this career that you have fashioned and created, that you may have been the first and only in the room, or the one and only in the room. Have you ever felt the grip of the imposter syndrome and the inner critic? And if you have, how did you navigate them when they did show up?
Ooh, girl. Yes. A lot. I mean, I think for a really long time, again, I thought that something was wrong with me. I thought that I wasn't good enough. I thought that I just needed to do better. I really did. And I didn't understand all of these different dynamics that were at play. And so that's why I really, I'm a real advocate for doing some work around becoming more conscious of, imposter syndrome, and becoming more conscious of, just what's systemically, like systemic racism and institutionalized racism. Like it's important for us to understand that history. And here's the thing, kind of going back to, our talk about school and history, like I did not learn that kind of history in school, and that would have been pretty helpful. Do you know what I mean? Like that would have been a good education to learn more about. And, I think it certainly wasn't anything that at the time was the way that things were being taught. But I had to learn this as an adult. And so I think that, yeah, I've dealt with it. I still deal with it. And, but now that I'm more conscious of it, I'm able to say, oh, okay, it's not just me. Or, oh, it's okay not to be perfect, because I actually can be more inspirational or more effective or I can be better at whatever it is that I'm doing by actually just being myself.
Right.
I can be better at those things. And perfectionism, like you're never going to get there anyway. And you're just going to sort of destroy yourself in the process, which that doesn't help anybody.
Absolutely. That part needs to be put on t-shirts, mugs, and everything. Perfectionism is just, it just leads to rack and ruin in my estimation. Mm-hmm. And, while we're talking about rack and ruins.
I like that transition.
Yes. Do you think that the story of the strong Black woman, that trope, that stereotype, that vision that's been carved, do you think that it's destroying the Black woman's mental health?
I think that I feel like it's interesting because in many ways, the strong Black woman serves us, right? Like, because there are all of these ways in which the patriarchy, sexism, racism are pushing us down. We put up armor. Like, of course, I don't want to say that it's necessary, but it helps us in many ways. And I think that, many of the successes that I've had so far, I've had to kind of suit up, put on some armor, and like go out there and do what I need to do. However, it also is just it's also destructive as well. It's also just, so I guess I don't want to say that I think that it's all negative, because I don't see it in quite such a black and white way. But I think that if we sort of depend on it and we hold on to it for dear life, then, we're not able to really fully be ourselves. Like, we cannot be free if we feel like we have to be strong Black women all the time. Like, we're not strong all the time.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm a Black woman all the time, but I have a range of emotions. I fall down and pick myself up. I sometimes am a great mom, and sometimes I really need some help. I've been going to a therapist for, I want to say, about 3 years now. I actually have my session with her right after this.
Okay.
And I feel like the strong Black woman trope is like, no, I don't need anything. I don't need anyone. Like, but now I have found myself becoming an advocate of, self-care, of therapy, of like those things. The strong Black woman doesn't allow us to be the humans that we are. And we deserve that. We deserve to be human beings. So, sometimes you have to sometimes you do need to put on armor, and I respect it, but I'm letting go of that more and more as I sort of step into my humanity.
That is beautiful. I do love that. And especially that part about stepping into our humanity and giving us space to be the humans that we are. it's absolutely necessary. And so when we start looking at being our human self and being able to say, I will have moments where I will fall down, I will have moments where I will falter. What are the top 2 tips that you will give to your clients, to other women of color, on what they need to be more resilient?
So one thing is to, let's see, I feel like I have so many different things I want to say about this. But what's most important? One thing that I think that is really important, it's something that's been very important to me. It has been therapy, to be perfectly honest. Like, I think that it's really important for us to be able to be vulnerable and to talk about whatever our challenges are, and be able to do that. So that may be with a therapist, that may be with a coach, that may be with, a group of girlfriends. I think that, there's this idea about shame, right? And shame being, Brene Brown talks about shame being something that it thrives with secrecy, it thrives with silence. And so I think one of the most important pieces is to find whoever you need to talk to, so that you're not silent about the things that are hard for you, it's really important to have those kinds of conversations. It's important to, if you want to cry, if you want to scream, like, just let out your emotions. I think that that's really important. So again, people do that in different ways with different groups of people, but find that safe place. And I know for me, that is usually among other Black women, where you can really say hard things, so that's one piece. And then I guess, the other one would be to speak your disruptive truth, right? So find safe places where you can bring all of who you are. And then there's this beautiful transcendence that happens when you bring, part of that message out into the rest of the world. It's very empowering. So, don't just keep it to yourself. Also share who you are with the rest of the world.
Right.
And you will be transformed, and you will transform the lives of other people too.
I like that. That is absolutely very beautiful. And I have some more questions. And so I think this question is a bit of a change, because you currently live in Philadelphia, you're a native New Yorker, you've been up in Boston. So I'm a London girl. And I'm curious, how do you survive those winters? Because those things are brutal.
I know, that's so funny. Boston was real. I don't even know how I survived those Boston winters. And they seem to keep getting worse and worse and worse these days. A big wool jacket, some mittens, like one of those nice hats, like you cover your ears, like just cover your entire body, everything.
Listen, if I lived up there, I will basically function like a bear. Like, I'm just gonna be indoors till spring. Bye.
Yeah.
I will I'm going indoor party and I'm gonna be here till spring.
Right. You're like, this is my hibernation period. You can call me again in April. Yeah, I don't know how I did that. That was a mess. I mean, I do come from New York, and so I know my way around some snow. I'm kind of, in the Philly area, I'm kind of spoiled now. We don't get a ton of snow now. But yeah, I mean, I'm good. I'm kind of like you. Like, as long as I can be by the fire, the nice like cup of tea or whatever, I'm good.
And this is why I don't go skiing, because I basically tell people, if I'm going skiing, I need to be sure and guarantee that I can get hot chocolate in my body weight to have for the entire period.
Exactly. You know what? We should go to a ski lodge and we should hang out in the hot tub with our hot chocolates.
That's the way to do it. And then other people can be on the piece. And really what we're doing is being of service, just in case they get lost. We can tell people that they went out in the morning and they never came back while we're sipping the hot chocolate.
Exactly. You know, we can totally be helpful to other people. That sounds great. That sounds great.
Exactly.
From the hot tub, though.
Exactly. So, you know, Jen, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. And my last question is, how can people find you? What do they need to do?
Yeah. So the best ways to find me are my website, jenfranksahaghotu.com. And I'm assuming they'll be in the show notes and that. Perfect. Because that's spelling, that's a lot. And then actually you can find me at Jen Franks Ahaghotu everywhere. So on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and then my website. So it's Jen Franks Ahaghotu in all those places. And I would love for you to reach out.
Good. People, you have to, if you have a course burning in you, like she says, there, you know, that saying that goes, hey, you have a book in you. She believes that you have a course in you. Now, I know I said that question was the last question. I'm about to do a Columbo and go, but one more question.
Sure. Go for it. Let's do it.
What is your go-to song for karaoke?
Oh, okay. Like, this is the most important question of our conversation. So, okay, my go-to karaoke song is random. It's Total Eclipse of the Heart. Yeah, it's just a classic. It's just a classic.
Awesome.
But what else do I? Yeah, that's my very favorite. That's my very favorite. Very, very dramatic. And yeah, there may be a few. I sort of throw some curses in there as well. So kind of keep it spicy. Yeah. That's another thing we need to do. When you were in
London, we are going karaoke. When you were in London, we are going karaoke because they have some really awesome places for karaoke here. And I'm going to apologize to Tina Turner in advance because, yeah, I butcher Proud Mary.
Oh, I can't wait to hear you butcher Proud Mary.
I do the whole dance routine and everything, and then I end up on the floor for like 10 minutes.
Just recovering.
And then I'm then just in awe of Tina Turner because I've seen her do that in heels and just look fantastic and amazing. And I'm like, no.
I know. Oh, Tina, legend. And Lillian, legend as well.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to say again, thank you for being on the show and sharing your information with us. All your details are going to be, all your links are going to be in the show notes. So people, please connect with Jen Franks Ahaghotu. And I have to be very mindful of the pronunciation because names are important. And so again, I'm going to say thank you. And it has been a pleasure.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure, Lillian. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Guys, you've heard the show. You've discovered a bit about the woman. Reach out to her, find out more, find out how she can help you birth your course so that we are taking your course in 2022, 2023, and beyond, and you can make that change in somebody else's life. Now, you like the show, you know what to do. Give us a like, give us feedback, come back to us, tell us who else you'll love to hear on the show. In the meantime, it's a wrap, and we'll see you same time next week. Bye.
You've been listening to the Shine Out Loud Show. If you want to connect with us or let us know what you thought of today's show, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Shine Out Show.